Well, so I thought, just for a split second, I was on the verge of being able to gain access to this building racial literacy program, something that I addressed, or highlighted even, a few days ago. I also pointed to the fact that, according to a Freedom of Information request, it was said that the only people that have the ability to see what's being discussed and shared amongst the teachers that are involved in this building racial literacy program, only they have access to it. The public in general can't access it. So I thought there and then it was a bit odd, but I managed to come across this webpage here on Professional Learning Education Scotland. And naturally, as the page scrolls down a bit and you come to all these little segments that open up, I thought for a split second, as I said, I was onto something, but nah. Just seems that this is my version of systemic barriers that I have to tackle, it seems, because there's a plethora of barriers, it seems. But I do find it relatively peculiar that there seems to be a sort of a clear attempt to ensure that the average Joe can't obtain access willy-nilly, unless it really is just a case of logging in and registering, but we'll get to that because I don't think it's as clear cut as that. So anyway, what this website does say is a bit more than what the video provided that I played in the last video regarding this. So it says here that the National Building Racial Literacy Programme aims to set anti-racism as a baseline professional value, empowering educators to identify and implement anti-racist behaviours and processes in their everyday practice, with the ultimate goal of the Building Racial Literacy Programme being to make every educator in Scotland racially literate, effective at dealing with racism, and confident in leading anti-racism. Co-constructed with a range of partners, including education practitioners and stakeholders on the government's Race Equality and Anti-Racism Education Programme, the Building Racial Literacy Programme is currently at its early stages of development, as a prototype is being tested by a first cohort of 88 participants across 27 local authorities. So then, the first question is how the program's been developed. It goes on to say that it's following a new model for collaborative programming, or program development, with different types of engagement and partners being listed below. So who are the design partners? Program prototype has been designed in partnership with members of the School Leadership and Professional Work stream of the aforementioned Race Equality Anti-Racism Education Programme. Also included is the anti-racist organisation and training providers, including SIR or CRER, the Scottish Association for Minority Ethnic Educators, ScotDec, Third Generation Project, etc. The design partners collaborate to design professional learning experiences for educators, planning for recruitment, evaluation, communication and sustainability of the Building Racial Literacy Programme. The partners have been encouraged to collaborate for several iterations of the programme until there is more capacity in the system to deliver the programme more widely. So then it goes on to talk about content creation partners are being invited at different stages of the programme, yada yada. Being mindful of their emotional labour and potential capacity restrictions, content creation partners will be contacted for focused engagement. Clear requirements for each type of content will be set with the support of design partners, and cohort 1 content creation partners can include any third sector organisations and community groups empowering people with lived experiences of racism in Scotland. So that's all the BAMEs. Youth groups with demonstrated commitment to young people's activism, individual activists and academics, artists, writers, social media influencers, graphic designers, etc. With content being about, e.g. capturing lived experiences during and out with the COVID pandemic. Out with programme events. Yeah, my phone went, so I kind of got distracted there, hence why I said a completely different word to what was actually on the screen. Anyway, so it comes down here. There's a couple of interesting parts in this, but obviously don't want to just regurgitate everything that's on the screen because some of it is just boring shite, obviously. During live programme events, including Induction Day, delivery partners are required to facilitate different learning activities due to the sensitive and emotive nature of racial dialogue. Whoa, it's riveting stuff. It's piquing my interest anyway. Purely because obviously this bullshit's been designed to target our children. So naturally, I'm inclined to care. Careful consideration needs to be given to facilitation to ensure that safer spaces are created for white people and for people of colour, the BAMEs, the beautiful BAMEs, with lived experiences of racism. And they all have a lived experience of racism purely for being BAME. Whether that be the fact that they don't see themselves in Parliament, whether that be somebody looked at them funny on the bus, whatever it may be, whether it's a disparity out there, whether they didn't get an A in maths, they've got a multitude of microaggressions that they can pluck from their arsenal to proclaim that they're victims of racism, because by default, until they suggest otherwise, they are all victims of racism. They're all oppressed as well, and marginalised, and lacking equity. But of course, it goes on to say here that delivery partners can include Education Scotland's lead specialists, so far one person of colour and 2 whites. Riveting. The interested design partners with experience of facilitating professional learning, external facilitators or qualified counsellors, to support any participants for whom the programme content may trigger racial trauma and emotional distress. Fuck's sake. I don't know what it is with these people, like the way that they refer to these fucking things, man. The professional learning programme will be delivered entirely online for Cohort 1 through Education Scotland's programme website, online events on Microsoft Teams and the collaborative platform Stack. As a member of the very first cohort for this new national programme, you would be expected to commit to 2 full-day events, 3 twilight webinars and approximately 5 hours or more of self-directed online learning. Keep a reflective journal and submit a short extract of your final journal entry with your anti-racist action plan to present to your peers at the end of the programme. Engage your school and or learning community in the programme through a programme task provided on the programme's website. Evaluate and support co-construction of the programme and its future iterations. Become part of an anti-racist learning network and a national movement for racial literacy. Lead anti-racist change following your personalised action plan with the support of the learning network. Support anti-racism in your context, local authority. This can include supporting colleagues or children, wider communities to engage in anti-racist learning, supporting colleagues to engage with anti-racist resources and professional learning opportunities, and applying to support the delivery of future iterations of this programme. Fucking hell, that's a lot of demands. That's a lot of demands, a lot of commitment, but a lot needs to be done. It's an upward battle. It's a war to eradicate the BAME's plight of racism. And of course it says to complete the programme you would have to build your racial literacy. In particular, start learning about the nuances of racism and anti-racism with the language to name it. And build the skills to continue this learning along after the programme is over. Begin developing the skills, confidence and resilience to engage in racial dialogue. And develop a personalised action plan to lead anti-racist change. You will also receive a certificate of completion. Nominations for the programme? Wow. We've got 82 participants from across Scotland. That's who they were expecting. We're offering 2 places to each Scottish local authority for teachers and for local authorities. For local authorities more ethnically diverse, for local authorities with a more ethnically diverse populace. We're offering an additional 2 places for early learning. That's, nursery age and above slightly. And childcare, and community learning and development practitioners. They even want to infest childcare settings with this fucking cancer. Wow. And of course it's got the backing of the Scottish Government because we're tackling the racisms. Yeah, of course we are. Of course we are. Programme participants do not need to have an understanding of anti-racist practice. We actively welcome participants with differing levels of knowledge of racism and its impact. However, please note that this programme is not suitable as a restorative measure where a problem has been identified. Essential criteria for nominations are the ability to commit to the entirety of the programme and a willingness to engage in professional learning and to take an active role in evaluation of the learning. And then it says, an interest in supporting the professional learning of others is desirable and differing levels of anti-racist knowledge and experience are welcome. Scottish local authorities have until the 30th of November for nominations, so please get in touch. That was last year, so this is irrelevant. The programme's been developed. Once you're registered, you would be able to access the programme area on the Education Scotland website by logging in. From there, you'll be able to see and complete the programme tasks. The programme task would require you to read, listen, watch, reflect using the programme area and your journal. Post your responses to tasks on Slack, your private channels, and collaborate on Slack by commenting on the task responses of your peers or the peers. Whilst learning online, you are expected to work independently, get in touch with program leads and or critical friends, devote appropriate time to the program, read, listen and watch to relevant text, etc. Post responses to government tasks on Slack, have a reliable computer and broadband internet access, etc. Duration. We've got here the first iteration of the program took place between January and March, excluding a program welcome twilight session on Wednesday the 8th of December. So that's that. I see. Funding and costs. I think it was only I can't remember if they mentioned anything about a price in terms of the freedom of information. However, the program prototype was funded by the government's Race Equality and Anti-Racism in Education program. For cohort 1, funding has been offered to local authorities for 2 days of cover costs. No, let's just kind of backtrack there though, like that. This here, I know that 9 times out of 10, most people, irrespective of which country you're in, you'll just gloss over that. But when it comes to shit like this, you need to kind of call a spade here. The taxpayer's paying for this. The taxpayer's paying for this. It ain't the government. It's not coming out of Nicola Finlips' little pocket, is it? It's not expected that the funding will be available for future iterations, so the program is free for participants. What is racial literacy? I wonder. The Building Racial Literacy program refers primarily to France Windance's Twine's definition as a form of anti-racist training, with the recognition of racism as a contemporary, not just historical problem, a consideration of intersectionality, the ways racism intersects with other factors such as class and gender, the development of language to discuss race, racism and anti-racism, and the ability to decode race and, wait for it, microaggressions. Woo! Wow, I'm really gutted that I couldn't be part of this. I would love to have sat down and participated with the gang, talked all about my microaggressions, and the really would have been, just beside myself. I would have been able to sleep at night knowing that potentially the day that followed, like a kid at Christmas, there was that potential that I might have been able to say, tomorrow will be the day. That big fat Thursday that's coming my way could be the day that I finally have the ability to decode the microaggressions. I could then help Graham Campbell, who struggles with them on a daily basis, The poor plight of Graham Campbell. Fuck's sake, get you. Oh, wow. I love this bit. This is a list of all the... There's Scott Sarner again, every fucking time. A list of all the organisations and authorities who have been nominated or have successfully nominated participants for the Building Racial Literacy programme. We've got Highland Council, which is mine, Edinburgh, East Lothian, Fife, Scottish Borders, Dumfries and Galloway, Dundee, Glasgow, Inverclyde, Western Barnshire, etc. And then to finish off here, it says that the induction was completed on the 24th of January. 81 participants managed to attend. Those unable to attend still have the opportunity to catch up with recorded versions of the event. Oh, I'd love to see that. And of course, Professor Rowena Ashrad was there, introducing the concept of developing racial literacy in Scottish education, providing clarity and some key ideas for anti-racist education. This is the same Rowena Ashrad who wrote the big giant fat paper to the Scottish Government complaining about the lack of BAME teachers in our schools and how that indicates racism. Of course, standard procedure for these individuals, is it not though? The notion of an anti-racist journey with different models of vocabulary to make sense of these journeys really resonated with the programme participants who find themselves at different stages. The different experiences of racism faced by children and young people in Scotland were brought to light with a variety of multimedia extracts centering their wisdom and hard-hitting lived experiences. As this in and around when they were decoding the microaggressions. I really want to get to that part. Can we talk about that? That really sounds exciting stuff. Really fucking want to know, man. Wow. So, and then it just kind of goes on about some individual's blog, if you will. Lovely buzzwords here on display from the anti-racists, it's very interesting. Just imagine it. I mean, sometimes, as I've said before, sometimes can feel like a bit of a lab rat when I'm being sort of deconstructed and we're not even allowed the freedom to have a wee viewing as to what they're actually talking about. But, this is some of the words that they like to preach. Right? I find this interesting, though, really. Just think about how hard-hitting this is, or think about how easily it could be to frustrate yourself. When you have the likes of this baked bean deconstructing your identity, your heritage, your culture, your history, etc., while simultaneously insinuating that every aspect of your society is racist by default. You know, who the fuck do you people think you are? Like, seriously. As I've said before, the absolute irony of these individuals and their measly existence when it comes to the shit they're pushing. People like myself never gave race a second thought, but you people, the way that you are operating, especially the fact that your cancerous ideology is specifically geared towards targeting children, and you seem to have a green light to do so, that's just fucking wrong. I'm trying to be relatively polite, but there's been many a time where I would have lost my dog by now. But it's just fucking disgusting. Absolutely disgusting, really. And the fact that it just seems to be going on under everybody's nose. Nobody seems to be that aware. But, you know, she posted something interesting a couple of days ago, or in regards to the anti-racist or the racial literacy program. You know, she got her little certificate in the post. You know, so how do we gander at this, of course, as you do? How do we zoom in at first, obviously, as you do again? And it says at the top here, William Cross, Black Racial Identity Development Model, Janet Helms, White Racial Identity Development Model, and then talking about white privilege with John Amiachi. Right. And then we've got Global Citizenship Education Scotland, Nazut Utman, primary teacher and founder of Global Citizenship. She's allegedly a primary school teacher, I assume. Wow. I'd love to have that knowledge that my child was going to her class. Some of the shit here though, you know, actions, growing my understanding of the different barriers and challenges faced by the minorities within the BAME banner, by building further network links with minority groups other than mine, reading research and atrocities, or articles, sorry, my phone again, fuck's sake, 2 seconds, atrocities, articles, sorry about that. Intended impact on practice, showing solidarity and a deeper understanding towards other marginalised groups. For both learners, their families and colleagues, will help to build my skills and knowledge when supporting pupils and colleagues. Intended impact on learners. Minority pupils, for minority pupils, increased representation of their heritage and background in teaching and learning will show value to these. Also greater ability to understand the challenges and barriers they face through their educational journey, so as to provide appropriate supports. For white pupils, increased understanding of the value of diversity in their own lives and educational and professional journey. Oh wow, they need to be taught about the diversity that they might not actually experience at present because they could live in a relatively white area, but they need to be taught about the wonders and the value that diversity brings. Which is ironic again in and of itself, because as I said in the videos that I made yesterday, I think, it seems that the more diverse Scotland seems to get, the more these issues seem to arise. And immigrants in and of themselves ain't an issue in comparison to immigrants that bring in the anti-racist ideology. That is for certain. But I love that. You need to be educated on the values of diversity. So not only do... wow. Your way of life. No, Kajida Mohammed and whatnot. Now that you are fully equipped with the ability to decode the microaggressions, you are now primed and ready to be taught all about a new way of life. And that is the value of diversity that you might not necessarily have ever thought to yourself that you required. But they know. They know about the value of diversity. But it's strange because at the same time, on the flip side, they complain to no end about the so-called diversity. Having teachers who are racially literate means that learners will be able to enjoy a curriculum that is more meaningful and representative of a 21st century Scotland and more global. Is that so? More representative. Because as the years progress, the more and more immigrants come into this country that are of a different ethnic background, different racial backgrounds, despite the fact that by and large they're not exactly we're not exactly screaming out for them, but they're coming here and we're just forced to accept it. We have to tolerate it, and we get it rubbed in our face 24/7 that it's all about tolerance and respect and love and peace and sustainability. Wow. What else have we got? Encouraging teachers and others involved in the education of children and young people to become critical thinkers is vital if we want to see positive change in the fight to achieve race equality in our society. So critical, emphasis on the critical, of course, that's critical race theory. Yeah? So we kind of want to overhaul the current trends, the current academic system, which you've already kind of done. You've got your foot in the door now, all you do. And you want to kind of promote anti-racism, as it says here. If I can model critical thinking strategies, it will also allow us as teachers to encourage our learners, meaning the kids, to apply a critical lens, aka critical race theory, again. So if I can understand critical race theory, I can teach that to my children in my care.
And that will eradicate the racisms, of course. Yeah. Children and young people who can apply critical thinking strategies will be better equipped to move forward in a world that presents many challenges and barriers, to some over others. That again suggests to me as if there's some that have barriers that they're going to inevitably encounter, whereas others don't. Presumably you mean the whites, so why don't you just teach your bullshits to the BAMEs, leave the white kids alone? Nah, of course not. Of course not. Children and young people will feel better prepared to dismantle the unfairness they see in the world. Oh yeah, because when you see the world through the anti-racist lens, you will see nothing but, please feel sorry for me, rhetoric, misleading statistics, disparities in abundance, etc. I have no sympathy for anybody peddling this shit. I'm growing fucking tired of it, if I'm honest. They will experience a curriculum that is representative and values the different backgrounds of all in our society. Our society, oh yeah. Long gone are the days where it was a Scottish society. Now it's a multi-faithful, multi-ethnic society. And on top of that, if that wasn't in and of itself arguably bad enough, it needs to be completely overhauled and redesigned in order to accommodate these people as we move away from the concept of integration, and instead everybody just lives alongside each other. But just to ensure that there's that cherry on top, so to speak, just to be sure, we'll promote critical race theory and we'll promote all our bullshit, and you will obey. Yeah, that's so. Just to finish this off, I'm on the Anti-Racist Educator, which of course was co-founded by the person who's sort of spearheading the racial literacy program, Melina something. And on their glossary, they've got a little bit about racial literacy, or as it says here, racial consciousness. But in order to get into this page, it's racial literacy. It's also known as racial consciousness, as it says there, but it's a deeper awareness and understanding of race, via their way of thinking. Their methodology has to be implemented, of course, because the so-called Western methodology, that's racist. It's not based on science, man. Yeah, so we've gone from like racialization and whatnot to race doesn't exist to this shit. Racial illiteracy, they get to dictate who's literate and who's not, of course. If you're not up to par on the anti-racist lingo, then you are by default illiterate. But it's funny though, because I'm starting to see the same sort of shit coming out about the gender stuff. You're gender literate, or words to that effect, and there's climate literate. So this just seems to be a repetitive talking point now. Copy and paste routine, So all these activists and experts that think they know what the fuck they're talking about, when half of whom are just brainwashed. And they get to determine whether or not you are up to speed, up to par, educated enough. And if you're not, they will then suggest that you sit down, have a little seat, Chris Hansen style, decode the microaggressions together over a cup of tea, and then they will proceed to educate you on all things. Anyway, anybody can be racially illiterate regardless of race. In an attempt to defend racist rhetoric, it is common to hear people say that their one black friend said there wasn't any racism in Scotland, or that they didn't mind others using the N-word, or that a brown taxi driver said it was okay to say Paki. To all those statements, we must ask ourselves, were all those people of colour racially conscious? Did they have an understanding of the insidious operations of racism that make it seem non-existent aside from the occasional outbreak of hate crime incidents? Did they have a critical understanding of the historical violence associated with racial slurs that are still uttered from the lips of aggressive white terrorists? Oh, the white terrorists are rife, Let's not talk about any of the atrocities that are occurring across the world, in BAME areas of the world. No, it's the white terrorists. They're so fucking prevalent. These people, they always manage to masquerade their blatant, venomous hatred for white people under the guise of simply trying to teach you about racial literacy and we're trying to achieve equality, etc. It's just venom. It's fucking venom. And again, I wouldn't care. I really wouldn't care ordinarily. But again, this bullshit is geared towards educational practices, which by default, by extension, affects our children. So you have to bear that in mind. They're coming for your children, if they're not already in the vicinity of your children. This bit here though, it's very common in the West where people are taught from a very young age that everybody is equal, race doesn't matter, and if everybody adopts a colourblind lens to stop seeing race, then racism will disappear, Racial illiteracy is hugely problematic as we begin to realise the disastrous impacts of implicit and intentional racism and institutional racism propagated by the state and those with the most power. Oh, again, the power dynamics, the feministic bullshit, with race in its place this time round. We can't just live in a society now where everybody's colourblind. No, that's preposterous. Because you're ignoring my struggles, my strifes. You're ignoring the elephant in the room, which is the power structures that are all around us, because you're not managed to redefine racism in the moments that you've been distracted, and now it's all about the system itself. So I'm still a victim. Fuck off, man. The power dynamics, of course. Yeah. The white terrorists that you speak of, I don't see them in abundance. Don't see them. Don't see them cracking down on this shit. No, I see a government that's supposed to be the power. It's all the whiteys. They seem to be doing you a lot of favour as opposed to anybody else. Do they have an understanding? I read that bit. Have these people started questioning the racism that they too will have undoubtedly internalised as a result of socialisation in a racialised world? Racialised world. Racial literacy involves adopting a more nuanced understanding of race. It takes time to develop and is a lifelong project. Learning more about structural racism, critical race theory and white fragility are great places to start. So join us next week in Dumbarton's Primary 1 class, where we'll be teaching all the little white boys and girls about white fragility. Just in case. Oh, and we'll also teach them about the wonders of diversity, just in case there's an influx of Africans in the coming weeks pretending to be Ukrainian. What do you mean pretend to be Ukrainian? There's no such thing as a Ukrainian. We're all one, apparently. Peace, man. I'm sorry. I just wanted to kind of showcase what I've managed to find. Not very much, but just this toxic shit. It's fucking toxic.